Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're diving into a seriously powerful concept called the quantum shift in mind. If you've ever found yourself wondering how deep, lasting change actually happens inside the human brain, well, you are in the exact right place. We're going to take this fascinating, sometimes complex idea and break it down into a super clear, totally usable mental model that absolutely anyone can apply.
But before we get into the mechanics of it all, I want you to consider something. Does real change actually happen overnight, or does it just feel that way? We've all heard the hype, right? That dramatic story of a sudden personal transformation, where someone wakes up one day and boom, their whole life is totally different. Today, we're going to contrast that dramatic hype against the grounded, everyday reality of how our minds actually work.
Here's our roadmap for the explainer. First, we'll look at the feeling of transformation. Second, what a quantum shift actually is. Third, the hidden loop of change. Fourth, crossing the inner threshold. And finally, the real practical lessons. All right, let's jump right in.
Section 1. The feeling of transformation. More than just ordinary change. So when we talk about normal, everyday change, it usually feels like just one single thing is moving, like you're changing a daily habit, making a simple decision, or just experiencing a passing mood. But a quantum shift, that is a complete change in state. It's a move from one whole pattern of being to another. And the new pattern behaves so differently that your old logic simply doesn't fit anymore. It's really about a sudden, total reorganization of your mind's operating mode, rather than some mystical, magical event.
Moving on to Section 2. What is a quantum shift? Demystifying the metaphor. To make this concept genuinely useful for us, we've got to separate the dramatic label from the actual psychological reality. We need to set a clean, factual boundary here. On one hand, yes, a sudden change in your inner pattern and a threshold-based transformation is a very real thing. But on the other hand, this absolutely does not mean there's literal quantum physics happening in your thoughts, and it doesn't guarantee some instant supernatural breakthrough either. We're really just borrowing the feeling of physics to describe this, without importing any exaggerated claims.
To really grasp this kind of nonlinear jump, think about this universal analogy, boiling water. For a long time, as water heats up, it just gets warmer and warmer. You don't really see much of a difference looking at it. But then it hits that critical threshold, and suddenly it acts like steam. The entire state has changed. Well, our minds work exactly the same way. A small, steady buildup of pressure and everyday experiences can eventually lead to a sudden, discontinuous reorganization of our entire mindset.
Section 3. The hidden loop of change. The mind's architecture.
You see, the mind isn't just a bucket full of random thoughts. It's a living, breathing system, and there's a self-feeding cycle that drives it. Here's how it works. Step 1. Your beliefs decide what's real enough to even notice. Step 2. Your emotions step in and decide what matters enough to pursue or avoid. Step 3. Your attention reinforces that choice. And Step 4. Taking action makes the whole thing believable. These 4 interlocking steps act just like an engine, constantly nudging each other until a completely new operating assumption is built from the ground up.
Let's visualize this with something we've all experienced, a group chat that suddenly shifts its tone. No one officially announces a change, right? But someone sends one slightly passive-aggressive message, and instantly the emotional rules of the chat alter. Suddenly the jokes stop landing, people are typing really carefully, and the whole atmosphere tightens up. Our minds work exactly like this. Just one small insight or piece of evidence can instantly reorganize your entire internal atmosphere.
Or think about a mobile phone that's been searching for a signal and finally finds one. The phone itself didn't physically change into a brand new object. It has the same screen, the same battery, but its relationship to the network changed, and that completely unlocked new abilities. Inner transformation is exactly like this. It's really about rearranging the relationships and the invisible connections between our thoughts, rather than just piling up new facts in our heads.
Which brings us to Section 4, crossing the inner threshold. Insight versus integration.
It's a super common mistake to think that simply understanding a new idea is enough to actually change you. But having an insight requires integration. Think about a map update on your phone or GPS. The physical streets in the actual city didn't move an inch, but because your internal map updated, your ability to navigate that city changes immediately. Updating your internal mental map instantly changes how you perceive and handle reality, even if your external life looks absolutely identical on paper.
So how does a new pattern actually begin? Well, first, you have to interrupt an old expectation. Next, you test a totally different response, preferably in a low-risk setting. Then you gather new, positive evidence from that test. And finally, you let the mind update its model. Let's say someone believes they just aren't the type to speak up in meetings. Taking just one small action to speak in a safe space gives their mind brand new evidence. The brain learns, hey, it's safe to do this, and that quietly shatters the old loop.
Finally, Section 5. The real practical lessons. From idea to identity.
How do we take everything we've talked about and actually apply it to our everyday lives? The trick is to stop asking if a change is dramatic and start asking these 4 questions instead. What internal loop got interrupted? What new evidence was gathered? What old belief lost its authority? And what repeated actions stabilized the new pattern? True transformation is built gradually, yet it's felt suddenly. So now you're empowered to actively look for these structural shifts, instead of just waiting around for a magical breakthrough to happen.
I want to wrap up our explainer today with a final, provocative thought for you to chew on. Did the structure of the mind change, or only the content of the moment? The next time you feel a massive shift in your life, ask yourself that question. Are you just experiencing a passing emotional spike, or are you truly reorganizing the fundamental architecture of your mind? I really hope this sparks some deep curiosity for your own ongoing journey of personal growth. Thank you so much for joining me, and keep exploring those structural shifts.